Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of the Cookout. You're all invited, provided that you bring your own side dishes and you wear your mask and then you take it off. You got your mask right, and then in between bites you got to go like this, right? You just like mask on and then put it back on.
There's that one with the hole
And then
in
just
it.
yeah, or you can get one of those. Because naturally we are in a pandemic, and we're gonna try to be responsible and not lame, I guess. I don't know, whatever the hell your definition of that is, because everyone has a different definition of what is an appropriate way to behave in these strange times. But this is
wash your hands, wash your ass.
Yeah,
same as always.
Because apparently there were people that didn't wash their hands before this shit started happening. Like, I remember watching so many responses to this when it first started, where people were like, "Oh, what's next? We're gonna have to do basic hygiene," like some of the takes that people had, and then they just exposed themselves so hard without even realizing it. It's just like, yeah, dude, people do that. People wash their hands when they come out of a public restroom and all sorts of shit like that I was seeing. I was just like, dude, that's the one takeaway. Yeah, go ahead.
I had a friend in middle school that never wiped his hands after he shit ever.
What? He just walked around. He just. Oh god.
That was Brian.
That was Brian.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my god! You guys want to see Brian? Go to Greg's old YouTube channel.
We'll get a
link in the description.
Oh my god! See, I think when I was younger, I used to think like if it was just like hand contact, like if I was just taking a piss, then I didn't care, because then you could just do like the elbow thing. So maybe like middle school me.
What like on the?
Yeah, on the handle. So maybe middle school me was just like stupid, and that was like the one dumb thing that I did hygiene wise when I was like a child. But
no, you can never go drunk into a bar restroom and pee and go and walk out without washing your hands.
God, no, hell no.
It's not. Can't do that anymore.
Especially now, like, yeah, it just really exposed everything. I think that's the one takeaway we'll get from all of this, is that at least people are going to be a little more like hygienic conscious, I guess. This is like the first episode of the program, so it's a little scuffed, but once
we're doing a great job already.
I think it's fine considering everything so far. Yeah.
Let's see where my camera is. Is this my camera?
But the other gentleman in a red shirt with glasses accompanying me is Patrick, and he goes by the Maverin. He's a mod in my Discord and a mod in my Twitch chat, and him and I go way back. And
you may know me from banning you.
Yes, you might know him from banning you for repeating the same thing over and over again in chat. Which
take no joy in it.
Or for not posting malarkey in the malarkey posting channel, which is solely reserved for malarkey, and then people are still going in there and just
please, guys, don't post anything but malarkey.
Literally just posting like entire like thesis projects about I don't even know what the fuck what. Just like Tim Pool videos. Really, guys? Come on, man.
Some people have different opinions, Greg, and we're gonna get into some of those different opinions.
But what specifically this guy, like, out of all the people you could pick, it's just it's like I got nothing to say. It's just
Tim. What can I say about Tim Pool? Like, I don't want to offend anybody.
Oh man.
Other than Tim Pool, I'm okay with hurting him.
We were literally talking about how this because one thing that I like to do before I start my Rainbow Six streams is I like to complain about politics to my chat for 30 minutes before I actually queue up in ranked. And one person was like, "Hey Greg, what's your opinion on Vosh?" And I was like, I'm not giving my opinion on Vosh because
people ask your opinion on Hasanabi as well.
And I didn't want to give my opinion on Hasanabi because the last thing that I want for a channel that has like 1,000 subscribers right now is to like talk shit about like one particular dude who has like almost 1 million followers on Twitch, and then they're like, "So this Rainbow Six YouTuber Gregor had some things to say about me on his stream, And we're just going to spend about 45 minutes dissecting this video on why he's wrong. And I expect a response from him in the next 48 hours, or I'm right. Okay, thanks, idiot. And then that's just like, then my career's just fucking over before it even starts.
Sounds like you just publicly commented on Hasanabi. It sounds like you're fucking canceled now.
There's a whole bunch of hullabaloo to hash out. I mean, what the heck?
I mean, what the hash?
There's obviously the whole situation with the election that just went by.
I haven't heard about it.
COVID. Oh, I didn't know anything about it until Pat mentioned it to me this morning. Honestly, I had no idea that the election was even over. I didn't pay attention.
The United States existed.
I didn't pay attention to like any of it until just now. So this is all. These are all takes that I've only managed to recently develop within the past 30 minutes. So if they seem a little,
and you'll be able to tell.
If they seem a little bit off base, then then that's why. COVID literally went through a like complete statistical anomaly, if you even want to call it. I mean, not an anomaly in the sense that it doesn't make sense that it took place. Rather, it's an anomaly in the sense that the numbers of cases within a given day rapidly increased so much to the point where it just, if you eyeball it, I'm pretty sure if you ran an outlier test, it might even reach that range.
I think because up, so if anyone wants to see a graph, it was like this. It's like April, July.
Yeah.
Now, and it's really high. It's double the peak of July. Isn't that a little crazy?
Just a little bit. I don't know how many people are familiar, if they remember taking stats in school, but I'm pretty sure if you ran an outlier test on that within like a 95% margin, I think the only reason that it wouldn't apply is because there's so much data from it going as far back as March that it might keep it from just going out of that range. But I think if you look at it in context of just the summer, it would probably be able to fall under that category. Like it would trigger the little like blip, like, whoa, what the hell is going on with that if you calculated it.
Yeah, for anyone who hasn't been paying attention, numbers hit 194,000 a day yesterday, and the highest peak we had over the summer, which was our highest peak ever, was 75,000. So 194 versus 75. That's a big number. That's a lot more.
AOC, of course, is making a list and checking it twice, and she's gonna execute every Trump supporter in the town square.
Yes.
Except not really, because that's fucking ridiculous. And we're gonna talk a little bit about the dynamic between the two parties right now, I think, and where we're predicting that it could go, and where we definitely don't think it's going to go.
Grover Cleveland 2024,
which is not gonna happen. But there's already bets going up on like the betting markets on like predicted for whether or not he's gonna run again in 2024.
So
which he's not gonna do because he's gonna win in the Supreme Court or something. Of course, right? That has something to do with those metrics being as low as they are.
For anybody who's not familiar with the U.S. elections that just happened very recently, Joe Biden seems to have won them. But the problem is Trump thinks he won them. You see the issue? Come on. So there's a bit
of a discrepancy in the results. One of them lost, and the other person thinks they didn't lose.
And here come all the wave of comments. Oh, but this and that and this and that. Oh my God, Trump didn't lose actually because of this. That's cool. Personally, I think there's a large body of evidence to support the fact that this is not another 2000. This is not a situation where Bush has won Florida by 537 votes. The lowest margins we're talking about here is like 10,000. That's
right.
You can request a recount, but on that note, they're doing the recount in Georgia now. 50 out of 159 counties have already completed it, and there's been no major irregularities. Like, the results are basically the same as what they were, maybe 3 or 4 here and there. But on a margin of 14,000, that doesn't matter. Trump is going to claim a lot of fraud. He already is. He's put in lawsuits in all sorts of states, mainly Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Georgia. A little bit in Wisconsin, but he has, like, nothing there. I know we were going to talk about Dominion a little bit.
It's, and you know more about the Dominion situation than I do. I think I'm kind of coming at it from a more cultural, like what does it say about the culture that we're in, where literally you have two completely different stories that are being displayed by a partisan standpoint. Like it used to, I don't understand like where exactly the Republican Party like expects this to go, because it seems to me like the party platform right now was the election legitimate, and their platform is that it's not. I don't know about you, but I remember when I was in like middle school and I was learning civics, you know, they were like, oh, well, the Democrats tend to be more for regulation, which means like more invisible hand in terms of regulating markets and blah, blah, blah. And the Republicans are small government and they want to help out businesses and they're more fiscal and da, 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 da. And like now I guess they're going to teach kids in school that Republicans just ignore election results and that's their platform, and Democrats don't. It's like,
well, it's really strange because you have, like you're saying, most of the Republican Party is standing behind Trump and on him saying basically, I probably won this, or like, honestly, most of them aren't commenting because most of them are just like, you know, we're gonna. Because he's within his rights. Mitch McConnell's right. He's within his rights to do this. But it's just kind of like a waste of time when it's such an overwhelming result.
Everyone is within their right to sue the U.S. government for anything. But they're not immune from people looking at it and going, what the fuck? You know, or saying what the fuck, like on Twitter or whatever social media that you know, avenue that you prefer. Or for the press to look at it and go, what the fuck? And so far, I mean, it's a very bizarre set of circumstances, I think, that it puts the American public in, because there's basically two stories, like I said, that go out, and you look at every other major news organization that is reporting one thing, even Fox. You go to every
the first one to call Arizona.
Every outlet, yeah, and well, Fox News is full of shit because they called Arizona blue, even though there was no reason for it to not go blue, statistically speaking. You know, because they called it, quote, too early or whatever that was supposed to mean. I mean, it's come down to basically, I think, one press outlet that seems to think that there was some kind of foul play involved, Newsmax. And then every other press outlet, like AP, Reuters. I mean, these aren't random, like, oh, it's like the super hyper liberal New York Times. There goes
I heard Sean Hannity call AP a left wing news outlet the other day.
It's crazy.
I thought they were a little more neutral than that, you know?
Nonsense. Complete nonsense.
You got Newsmax and OANN or OAN.
And that's it. And that's it. And then on the
where the hell did Newsmax come from? Had anybody heard about Newsmax before like 3 weeks ago?
I legit had no idea who these people were until 2 weeks ago.
Before the election.
I had no idea who they were, and the only reason that I knew who they were was because conservatives looked at Fox News and their reporting on the situation and went, oh, these guys are full of shit because, you know, like you said with Arizona. And then they started getting their news from Newsmax instead. And then Donald Trump goes on Twitter and he goes, oh, Fox News is full of shit because they called Arizona, or they, you know, claim that I lost. So now I only get my news from Newsmax. Here, read this article from Newsmax. I mean, how easy is it just for one small company to just come up and just feed people what they want to hear and then make a business model off of that? It's not that hard.
It's not state-run media by any means, but it's like you're replacing one news network that has stuck with you and has been like the traditional conservative media outlet with just another one that nobody's ever heard of and nobody knows any of the people there, and like they don't know what they're about, and it feels like I don't know. I don't want to get too dramatic.
It's not even
a lot of moves that have
it's not even the traditional
third world.
It is the traditional conservative media outlet, and Fox was also the traditional conservative media outlet that got hammered by liberal press outlets for years. I remember, I mean, as far back as George Bush, that was such a running gag with liberals, was to make fun of how, you know, George Bush was a country bumpkin, and you know, all those dumb dumb hicks with a country accent from Texas would go out and vote for George Bush and watch Fox News. And now it's like, and now Fox News is, yeah, now Fox News is like a commie like plant that's trying to help Biden win. I mean, it's such a fucking reach to go from point A to point B.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happens.
I honestly don't know either. It's very confusing sometimes to think about how much of a transition has happened for the GOP over the last 4 years. But just even over the last month or two, it's been so incredibly extra. Like, they have to stick with all of his lies.
So we should probably go into the actual claims so that people don't
right.
claim that we're
yeah, no, sorry.
We're a bunch of lefties. I know it's really I know it's really difficult because, you know, if you just go off of logic and deductive reasoning, then you look like a leftist now. That's really hard to like unplug and go like, oh wait, I have to give a neutral take and actually explain why I think 2 + 2 is 4. You know, so here, chat, just so we make sure that everybody knows. So these, you go one
points, talking points.
Okay, and then you put one, and then you put them together, and now there's 4 of them. See? Just so we're clear, just so we make sure that everybody understands we're on the same page.
No, that looks wrong.
Oh, it's wrong?
There should be 5.
What looks what? But why should it be 5, Pat?
Why shouldn't it? You don't have any proof it isn't. And scene. That's
it.
Cases.
It's fucking. So there's 5 like main points that they're going off of. I guess there's the fraud claims going through Dominion, which is the software that they use to count the votes.
Right.
There's claims that the ballots have been backdated. There's claims that dead people have been voting, and there's Schrodinger's poll watchers, who are simultaneously far away enough from the polls to not be able to see the results, and close enough to them to also see that there's something fishy with the signatures at the same time, which makes sense. So
there's a wonderful quote from Rudy Giuliani about the poll watchers, where he said that they move the poll watchers 6 feet closer, you know, in these court decisions, but then the poll workers get 6 feet further away, which everyone has said is not true. What actually happened was they were 20 feet away, which admittedly is pretty far away. And so they sued and they were like, hey, can we become 6 feet away instead? And Pennsylvania courts were like, yes, you can do that. And then they were 6 feet away. And that's what happened. And like, that's it. That's the entire
Did you see
story.
the picture of the guy with the binoculars? And
yes,
everybody was like, this is evidence of voter fraud because he's watching it from too far away.
It's evidence of a drama queen, dude.
That's his job, right? Like I'm literally being told that there's foul play at work. This is evidence of foul play because he has binoculars, and it's foul play because he wasn't close enough to see the ballots.
Right.
That makes no sense.
And it's also, it's not like they're supposed to be close enough to like look directly at every ballot and like see who everybody voted for. They're supposed to be close enough so that they can see like if a poll worker pulls out a pen and like crosses something out and writes something else down.
It's like with card counting at a casino. It's just to make sure people aren't like fucking with it.
Yeah, it's not so. You don't have to be like up the poll worker's ass to see what they're doing.
But in some countries they do that. In some countries they have multiple like non-biased workers that.
Well, we used to have confidence in our elections, but
I guess we did, and then now we can't do that. But in Taiwan, I think I remember watching a video of a guy literally like there's the audible element because he announces the vote cast for person A, and then another person looks at it and sees the card and they go, okay. So there's like 4 people in the same room, and like the rationale behind that is that they're all witnesses to the event, so that way if one guy one guy, you know, gets a little bit of money under the table, and then they say, actually, this happened. Then the other three guys, you know, under threat of perjury, they can't fucking claim later in court that, oh, gee whiz, I don't know what happened. It's like, what would this happen with this this UPS guy who went to Project Veritas first? Like, maybe start with that.
Yeah, the guy that recanted.
Yeah. First of
I
all,
wanted to say also, as for any criticisms we're giving like to the Trump campaign for doing this, and that's a lot. There's something to be said for like maintaining the integrity of an election, and if you think an election process like isn't fair or isn't closely monitored enough, I'm all for like making elections as fair as possible, and there should not be any voter fraud. Like, I just think, you know.
Actually, I want voter fraud for my candidate, Pat. That's actually what I'm advocating for.
Excuse me, neolib. Please.
I'm not advocating for proper checks and balances and people to follow the law. I just want the voter fraud that I know that happened to happen for my candidate.
Like, I hope
clearly
these Trump investigations expose some flaws in the system so that we can be more confident in our next elections. It's just not cool to also be like fully undermining faith in the process that mostly works. Like, there might be some stuff that slips through the cracks that we need to fix, but like, it's not 14,000 votes slipping through the cracks.
Well, literally any election, when you're dealing with numbers, literally counting in the millions, data points in the millions, there's nothing you can do. There is always going to be a degree of error.
We're never going to completely eliminate fraud.
Whether or not that is as a result of deliberate actions by bad actors, or somebody just tabulated it wrong, or they wrote something incorrectly, there's always going to be that little bit of wiggle room. But
that leads.
What bothers me about it the most is, like you said earlier, before the shows, before we got into it at the beginning of the show, talking about the 2000 situation with Bush and Al Gore in Florida. That was a margin of error by like 1,000 votes. And in that situation, it was reasonable to call for a recount because there could very well have been a clerical error that could have determined the outcome of the 2000 presidential election. Trump is losing in states by the hundreds of thousands right now.
And I'm also not saying like don't call a recount in Arizona and Georgia, but like the lawsuits in Michigan and Pennsylvania, they seem like weirdo moves. Like, you're losing by 60,000 votes.
Yeah, it's just it's not going to happen, man. It's just not going to happen. I mean, like, if you want to look at it from a purely pragmatic point of view, it's like, oh, well, if we do it, then maybe we'll be able to pull it off. It's like, no, it's over. That's it.
Your clerical error thing leads into the Dominion thing a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I spoke to Sean Hannity. Everybody refuses to call Sean Hannity.
Pat has he has a press badge with Fox News, actually. That's why he got to speak with Sean Hannity in person.
No, I did not. But anyone who gets the joke will get it. And if you don't, it's okay. But Sean Hannity did this big segment on Dominion on Fox News that Trump retweeted. And I watched the whole thing. Praise the Lord. And he was talking about the Dominion errors and how 6,000 votes got flipped from Biden to Trump in Wisconsin. And since there's such a small margin of 14,000 in Georgia, and the Dominion voting systems are used in many states, Michigan and Georgia being two of them, that you really need to look at the Dominion voting systems in Georgia. And he cited all this information, and I thought it was pretty interesting that none of the information he said was like Dominion voting systems changed vote tallies or anything. It was all user error stuff, or like the system's freezing up, or like poll workers having trouble with setup. None of the problems with Dominion were like, oh, a bunch of these votes are being changed and this isn't going to be caught later. Like, you know how YouTube, I'm sure you've all seen it, under like every video remotely related to an election, it'll say there are robust safeguards in place to certify the integrity of election results.
That's liberal media trying to trick us into thinking that it was safe. And it's like a psyops campaign.
So like,
I mean, like, this is what people say. Like, it's not even far off the mark.
do recounts certainly, but it's like if there's a Dominion error, it's a user error that's probably going to be caught down the line. And if it isn't, man, look into it. If the Dominion system shouldn't be used in 2024, I want to know. But like,
well, you and I were out
like
for
having problems.
You and I donated to Bernie, and we wanted Bernie to make it, and then we got into the primaries, and then all of a sudden it looks like Joe Biden is on the ropes, and then he just out of fucking nowhere just bounces back because of what, South Carolina?
The entire establishment just coalesced behind him and said, we're scared of the progressives. We gotta stop this now.
And it's like, was that fraud, or was that a campaign that had more influence
I would say it was a scummy campaign.
Yeah,
it wasn't fraud. You know, I mean, like, I'm not.
It's like Floyd Mayweather, his whole style of fighting is like a really defensive, boring style of boxing that is not entertaining at all to watch. But some people look at it and they're like, this shit sucks. This isn't, you know, true boxing. And well, that doesn't mean that his wins aren't legitimate. That doesn't mean that his undefeated record is illegitimate. Is what I meant to say, right? It's like, what's another kind of situation like that? Like he fought Manny Pacquiao, and Manny Pacquiao's like an old man now. He couldn't fight him when he was in his prime, right? And everybody went, oh, well, he beat Manny Pacquiao. He's still undefeated. It's like, yeah, maybe if he fought Manny Pacquiao when he was a bit younger, he probably would have given him a much more contested fight. Is the method of the competition a little scummy? Yeah, I think that's debatable. But does that mean that the result was illegitimate? No. Because there's no proof.
No, if we disqualified Trump for doing something scummy, it would be far over by now.
If we disqualified Trump for doing scummy things, he
you don't have to be in love with Joe Biden to acknowledge that he got more votes in the key states.
Right.
Like, he just did. And unless, you know, look at the Dominion systems. I challenge anybody to find any evidence of anything other than that Michigan flip that got quickly corrected. Because as far as Dominion systems are concerned, it's not out there. You know, we would have known by now. There's enough people looking for it. There's Republicans and Democrats in the room. There's, you know, this article has been circulating about Judge Cynthia Stevens in Michigan. Or wait, I think that's the one. But she's the one who dismissed. There's been a lot of Trump. Sorry, there's so many Trump cases that have been dismissed in court that it's hard to keep track of them. This one in Michigan.
He's not being facetious. I mean, like there really is. Like, I've been trying to keep up with this crap, and I literally cannot. Like, it's a matter of keeping up with how many of the cases have been dismissed by judges.
In Michigan,
it's not a matter of finding like the one that gets through, because all of them have been dismissed.
Judge Stevens dismissed the filing as inadmissible hearsay within hearsay. Trump's lawyers appealed, and the next court kicked the filing back as defective. Here's the one I was thinking about before. I am asking you as a member of the bar of this court, are people representing Donald Trump for president in that room? And the campaign lawyer said there's a non-zero number of people in the room. And she was like, well, then why are you here? I literally don't understand what your complaint is then. Because, you know, one of the big Trump complaints is they're not letting our poll watchers in the room. They are. Like, in every case that he's claimed that.
Yep. Dead voters, that's another one.
Dead voters.
Rudy Giuliani and in front of the Four Seasons landscaping company. Am I getting that right?
Yes, in between the sex toy shop and the crematorium.
In between, yeah. You cut out a little bit there. He said sex toy shop yes. Audience, just to make sure that you guys got that one. Yeah, Rudy Giuliani was talking about this, the whole viral like first press conference he's had where he's like, networks don't decide elections, and he was talking about Jim Brown. Like, he had this real knee slapper. He had a real woo, that's the real zinger kind of joke about Jim Brown, you know, or some guy, you know, who was dead in voting. And he's like, he's still voting. He's still out there. Rest in peace, this guy who's voting. And it's like, damn, this guy really is just like going out here on like national television and just saying dead people are voting for Joe Biden and it's a cover up.
Well, I love the second half of his sentence too, because he said, what do you say? Something doesn't decide the votes. Dead people don't decide.
Well, he said, come on, don't be ridiculous. Networks don't decide elections.
Networks don't decide elections.
Courts do. Yeah, courts do. Like as opposed to courts decide elections as opposed to voters.
They decide
as opposed
closely
to
contested elections.
As opposed to electorates.
It's in the name.
It's like it's such a like it's almost like saying, oh well, the press doesn't declare when a war's over. The two parties that signed the treaty declare it. But if two nations say, hey, we're signing a peace treaty, the war's over, that doesn't make the press any culpable for libel or slander for saying, hey, war's over, just because they haven't fucking signed the peace treaty yet. I mean media outlets call things within a margin of error all the time, even if that margin of error is 0.0001%. And it feels like to me the margin of error for this one, is that Joe Biden is going to be the next president of the United States, unless a meteorite crashes into the planet or we get invaded by aliens. I mean, yeah, I guess the media doesn't call elections in that situation, but it's such a silly thing to it's like the actually meme. It's a very actually kind of joke, like actually the media doesn't call it's like it doesn't fucking matter. It's not relevant to the conversation.
The Congress will certify the Electoral College's results in early January, and we will all know then. But
we'll all know that Joe Biden will be the next president. Yeah, I say it so confidently because I don't really see a problem in not saying it confidently. I mean, like, what are we gonna do? We're gonna be here 3 months from now after recording this show and then be like, oh shit, we got it wrong. Oh, it turns out the Supreme Court is like
Trump wins.
No, yeah, it's just fucking like, come on, man. Like,
you have to overturn the results in multiple states.
Yeah,
and it doesn't seem possible.
You would have to go through such a robust roundabout to go from point A to point B for that to happen at this point. It's just not in a million years.
As far as dead voters,
dead voters.
Go through some quick explanations on them. There's a lot of dead voters that's been happening. I say a lot. The small amount of dead voters that vote are a mix of a variety of things. One common one is you'll get somebody who has the same name, like a junior or a senior. I'm sure you've all seen these articles and stuff before, but there was this one, like William something was swirling around Twitter, and it's like, look, he's 140 and he's voting. That was his son. He wasn't. Like, they just wrote it down without the junior. That was it. And there's been a lot of other ones where in some counties you'll have placeholder birthdays. And so there's been a lot of people saying, oh, look at all these 120-year-olds voting, when the placeholder birthday is January 1st, 1900 or something like that. And so you'll put that in as somebody's birthday if their birthday is unavailable for some reason, but they're still eligible to vote. And it'll show up like a dead person has voted or somebody impossibly old has voted. Another thing is sometimes you will get like illegitimate dead votes. Like I've heard reports of like husbands, like much older guys or husbands or wives, like sending in ballots for their dead spouse who died like during the ballot application process, but like they sent it out because like, oh, it makes sense. She can vote. She was alive until like a month ago. Like there's things like that that are like
no, mistakes. they sent that ballot to that dead person on purpose. Clearly, that's the only logical explanation that could have taken place.
If somebody was alive until recently, you get a ballot application, and like some people
if I order a fucking manga, and I die in a car crash, a day after I order it, it's still gonna show up at the mailbox. It's not gonna like. It's just like it's such a strange thing to point out.
Little things like that'll happen, but like purposely cast fraudulent votes of dead people, exceedingly rare. You wouldn't overturn a margin of 200 with those numbers. Like that's the thing. All of these little fraudulent claims added up,
count to about like
100% right on all of them, are like, they're nothing because there's nothing systemic there. They're little here and there.
it's a little.
I mean,
that's enough. That'll flip PA, Pat. All 5 of them.
500 votes will flip PA. This is 2000. Dude.
It's yeah, and PA and Wisconsin and Michigan. I think
Michigan's
that more
like 100,000 votes.
More conversation. I mean, that's the crazy thing, is that we could be having a conversation about, oh, what happened with the Republican strategy here? How did they lose the Rust Belt, even though they got the Rust Belt from Hillary Clinton back in 2016? Like, what did Joe Biden do differently? What did Donald Trump do differently? Hey, what did Joe Biden do differently to flip PA? Georgia's going to go blue. We haven't even talked about that. There's so many things that you can go into in terms of like legitimate campaign strategy and the sentiment of the American public, you know, like political conversation that you could have. And instead the whole dialogue has been rerouted to this fraud bullshit. And it's almost like I didn't think that you could do it. I legitimately thought, there was a part of me that in the back of my mind thought, when Hillary Clinton lost in 2016, I remember, you know, the Democrats, a lot of very liberal people were crying the blues over Hillary losing and were just completely inconsolable, right? Everybody knows about that meme of the person in the green jacket. Yeah, no, right, during the inauguration. Like, that's there were so many instances where they made it like really easy to make fun of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and they had the Russiagate shit for God knows how long, and that lasted another 4 years. And we can have a whole separate conversation, I think, about how the Russia stuff, you know, they
next week Russiagate podcast.
They could have gotten at Trump on so many other things, you know, and the way they handled the Russia shit was, in my opinion, very very badly done. And we can have a whole, like I said, different conversation about that. But I do remember some Democrats, you know, getting at Donald Trump and saying, like, this was all the Russians' fault and we need to get rid of this guy because
there's
of the
a
Russians.
lot to be said about how
Hillary cried in her hotel room and didn't write a concession speech because she thought she had it in the bag. But she still fucking conceded. Which is crazy to me, that you can actually like get lower than the enemy that you were so righteously dignified about, in terms of like, oh, I can't believe that all these precedents that the Democrats are breaking about conceding elections and their decorum is out of line and blah, 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 and yada, yada, yada. And now it's literally, it's just a fucking coin flip in terms of how the Republican Party has handled this situation. And in some ways I think it's worse, because it's gotten to the point where it's discrediting the election system. I mean, that's discrediting our laws. That's discrediting the legal system by which we elect representatives in this country. It's fucking crazy.
And it's silly because it's discrediting the system that got them elected too. It's not, you know, ultimately it's not like a good thing for them, for people to have long-term lack of faith in the election systems.
I don't know what the gambit is. I don't know what the gambit is, because it is so clear that Joe Biden is gonna take that oath in January, and then after all 3 months of this, it's like what? What's the platform now? Where does it go? Do you do what the Democrats did for 4 years, and what are you gonna do? You're gonna Chinagate Biden now for 4 years? We're gonna say the Chinese hacked the election this time? I mean, we're literally gonna do the exact same bullshit that we did for 4 years with Trump in office, except now we're doing it, so it's okay. It just doesn't make a damn bit of sense. And the situation that's different here, it would have been one thing, I think, if Donald Trump had won in a state like Massachusetts or Vermont. If Donald Trump had managed to take a blue state away, you know, PA flip red, cool, whatever. But that's not, I think it's a lot harder to flip a state like Maine or Massachusetts or Rhode Island. Flip that red. Georgia is projected to go blue by pretty much every major news outlet right now, that are all bought and owned by George Soros, and they're putting fluoride in the water, and
which hasn't happened since 92.
5G. Yeah, that is that is a death knell to the Southern strategy. It's over, man. That's it. Like when you get a victory like that, because it's literally like red, blue. That's crazy, man. And Arizona went blue too. Arizona typically goes red. I mean, these are all states that this was not an election of Donald Trump's situation where he was like pulling like battleground states over to making them into red states. Joe Biden was somehow was able to, maybe the Dixie Democrat strategy actually managed to pay off for all the crap that the progressives gave him. And he managed to pull some of these states and flip them red in a way that hasn't been seen since the American Civil War. I mean, shit. This is like the Republicans have a lot of.
I guess Jimmy Carter kind of flipped some of those states red. I mean, like
because he was from Plains, Georgia.
Yeah,
and he had a peach farm, and
It's actually kind of funny when Jimmy Carter ran for re-election in 1980. He lost like California, New York. He lost like all of these liberal states, but then he had the whole South. It was very strange.
Jimmy Carter and Donald Trump have one thing in common, in that I think that they had like one pivotal thing that most of the American public saw as reprehensible that they managed to fuck up. And for Jimmy Carter, that was the Iranian hostage crisis. And that's why it was so easy for like a tough guy like Ronald Reagan to come in and fucking blow him out, because Ronald Reagan's whole pitch was, oh, well, we'll never, don't you hate it when you lose things?
That sounds like Trump a little
literally bit. It's the same fucking kind of situation where it's like, remember when the Iranians did the stuff and it made you pissed off? Fucking fuck them. Vote for me. And that's like literally what happened, because Jimmy Carter was a wimp. And then Donald Trump had COVID, and his whole thing with COVID was just like, fuck it, it's whatever. It's just, fucking deal with it. And Joe Biden's like, hey, remember that part where like a shit ton of people are fucking dead because this one guy was just like,
and it's not Trump's fault that all the people have died of COVID. Like I don't like it when
we're not that left.
I don't like it when I hear MSDNC being like, Trump has killed 200,000 people. No, he could have prevented like 100,000 deaths or more. I don't know, but like he didn't.
And how many would Hillary have prevented? I mean, I don't know.
More than Trump, but maybe I don't know.
Who knows?
I mean, like we had a pandemic response team under Obama, which would have helped. But
that would have been great.
Okay, let me focus in on this real quick. We need to take a brief intermission because I need to thank the Republicans that have come to their senses, the good ones, not even necessarily the good ones, but just the one. The ones.
Now it's gonna get clipped and put up on Hasanabi. He's gonna be like,
"Oh my god." The ones that have come to their senses on this and admitted that Joe Biden is going to be president. I would like to thank Ben Sass, Senator of Nebraska, Mitt Romney of Utah, Susan Collins of Maine.
Mitt Romney lost. Remember that?
Yep, but he won his Senate seat back. That's all that matters for him. Susan Collins of Maine. They all congratulated Biden. We got partial congratulations, like saying that he should get security briefings from Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, Marco Rubia. He's a woman now of Florida.
Don't you mean Marco Rubix?
Marco Shaggy, and Mike Rounds of South Dakota. All right, now we're moving on to the House. Those are all the senators. It's like 7. All right, Tom Reed of New York, Will Hurd of Texas, Francis Rooney of Florida, Fred Upton of Michigan, Paul Mitchell of Michigan, Adam Kinzinger of Illinois. Those are all of the Republican House members that have congratulated Joe Biden.
How many Republicans are in the House, Pat?
Oh, we're going to get into that, but right now it's 203 at least. 203, and about 7 of them have congratulated the president-elect. Now, governors, we're looking a little better. Not really. All right, Charlie Baker of Massachusetts, Governor Phil Scott of Vermont, Governor-elect Spencer Cox of Utah, Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland, and Governor Mike DeWine of Ohio. Thank you for doing the bare minimum. I appreciate it.
that's the barrier of entry now.
And the Bushes, the former president, and Jeb,
so, and China,
and
Chinese
China.
government,
and most other governments other than like Bolsonaro and Putin and
Turkey
Lopez Obrador,
congratulated
Mexico.
Biden.
I know, man.
Erdogan.
That sucks for Trump.
Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Of
I
all
mean, it's
people.
over when Turkey congratulates you. I guess.
I don't. Yeah. I mean,
it's not a good look for Trump.
Well, the whole.
So close with
I mean, the whole thing. I think that like the Erdogan and Xi Jinping, you can claim that they're not as much commemorations or congratulations for Joe Biden as much as it is like acknowledgments.
Oh, and Mike Roberts
of a new.
I'm sorry.
Oh, there you go.
That's all of the Republicans here.
There you go. All the Republicans, all 12. More than that, but
like
not
15.
Not a lot. Yeah. More like it's treated more like an acknowledgement of, oh yeah, here's the election, the result happened, and now this person is the president. And the only people that aren't really acknowledging it are like other weirdo tough guys like Bolsonaro. But even Bolsonaro kind of had a jab at Trump because he had this. He said Donald Trump is not the most important person in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I got more important shit to worry about, which I'm not a big fan of Bolsonaro. There's a lot of things that he's done that I'm not a fan of. I'm not inclined to disagree with him.
Yeah.
You know.
And we got a Bolsonaro thing too. But before we get away from Trump, if we ever do, oh please God.
I hope.
There are two more voter fraud things I wanted to address real quick. Okay, all right. You know the House of Representatives, right? There's a lot of them in there. Okay. So you have candidates on the ballot for those.
Yeah.
And the combined total of votes cast for either candidate in the House of Representatives election was less than the combined total of votes cast for Trump and Biden in the presidential election in favor of Biden. And so they're saying this is evidence of fraud, like a bunch of ballots with Biden have just been dumped. And there's a phenomenon called undervoting that people need to know about, which is very common. It's kind of crazy how common it is, where people will walk into the voting booth, vote like only for the president or only for whatever election they find is most significant, and then turn in their ballot. So there simply were a ton of people that went in the voting booth, voted for like just Joe Biden, and then didn't care about any of the other stuff. And that's the explanation for that. And like I've seen a lot of people be like, there were discrepancies in the amount of votes. It was because of undervoting. Like,
well, it's also linked to this what I think is a pretty decent counter argument for the very basic claim that the election was rigged for Joe Biden. It's all on the same ballot. All of the candidates are on the same piece of paper. If you're going to rig the election, why would you rig it just for Joe Biden and then potentially lose the Senate, which I think most people are under the impression that the Republicans will keep the Senate because the runoffs, I don't think Ossoff is going to beat Perdue, but hey, anything can happen.
Well, right before we do that, I just wanted to finish with the undervoting thing and saying that there was also a lot of people in 2018. A lot of people thought that Trump wasn't on the ballot, so that if they wanted to reject Trump, all they could do is vote for the Democrats on the ballot. But that wasn't the case in 2020, and they could still vote for their preferred Republican representative while also rejecting Trump, because there's a lot of Republicans that
happened,
love their Republican values.
Which happened.
Yeah, and that happened.
I mean, that literally, there's, looking at the seats that were lost in the House, you can literally see that happened. Because the Democrats lost like, what, 6-7 seats in the House?
Well, I'm looking at the numbers.
And in Miami, the Miami-Dade metropolitan area, there were career Democrats that lost their seats there. And now it seems like there's kind of this this weird sort of effort by the Democrats. And it's like this really big PR nightmare for the Democrats. I don't feel any I wouldn't want to be in the Republicans' position trying to deal with a guy who was literally outright saying that the election was legitimate. That's one thing entirely. But for the Democrats, you have the whole situation of trying to deflect what seems like, to most people, I think, that are tuned into what's going on, would seem like a Pyrrhic victory for Joe Biden, because he's going to be coming into a Congress that doesn't agree with him on a lot of things. He's going to be coming into a Congress, to a House that has lost leverage and is still fighting a little bit to actually push through a number of different, more left-leaning policies in the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. And he's trying to stay on the good side of the Dixie Democrat kind of voting base that he was able to pull, as evidenced in Georgia and maybe a little bit evidenced in Arizona. So he's kind of walking on this tightrope of like trying to please everybody right now. And I don't know what's going to happen in 2024. That's why I feel like it's so ridiculous.
I don't think it's going to be Biden.
I think it's
but Trump
ridiculous.
is already talking about running.
Well, he's not going to fucking. If the Republicans have any fucking brains left, they're not going to let him try to Grover Cleveland it.
Look, there's 15. I'm talking about senators, representatives, and governors. There's maybe 17 here.
You're right. That's probably all of them.
Well, just to catch people up really quick on the rest of the races, if they're not super familiar. In the House, there's 12 races still left out of 435. I won't give you too much of the boring numbers, but basically, the Democrats have lost at least 5 seats, and it's looking like they're going to lose like maybe another 5 more. They had a majority of they had 17 seats above a majority. Now it's going to be going down to like something like 10, maybe, if they're lucky. In the Senate, with the vice presidential tiebreaker going to the Democrats, the Senate seat for the Democrats went from 47 up to 48. So that means that the hurdle they need to get over to pass legislation is now going to be they need 2 Republican senators to swing to their side rather than 4, which is better.
Okay.
Then you have the 2 Senate races that are runoffs in Georgia coming up on January 5th. David Perdue versus John Ossoff and Kelly Loeffler versus Raphael Warnock. They are going to be very important because if the Democrats win both of them, which isn't looking likely, it's looking likely they're going to win one but not the other, which would put it at 49-51. But if they win both, it would be a tie. Kamala Harris would be the tiebreaker, and the Democrats would have basically a Democrat Senate. Though Joe Manchin would come in and fuck some bills up every once in a while. That little bitch.
Did you see Joe Manchin talk to? Was it Fox or one of the big who's it Alphabet Soup media companies? NBC, whatever, I forget. Some big organization. It was a legitimate organization.
Talk publicly for a while.
Joe Manchin literally went up and he was talking about how he like drew attention to like the Democratic Civil War going on, and basically saying, and he was trying to like convince neolibs and neocons like, hey man, we're not socialists, we're not commies. That's not his exact words were, that's not the Democratic Party that I know. I'm not going to vote for any of that crazy stuff like a Green New Deal.
I did see that statement,
or healthcare. I'm not going to vote for any of that weird stuff like healthcare. Ugh.
Dude, Trump's been calling everybody a rhino. Joe Manchin's definitely a dino.
There's lots of dinos.
Name only.
There's lots of dinos out there, and it's debatable whether
if they get the 50-50, it's an uphill battle for Democratic legislation.
For sure, and I
they narrowly kept the House.
It's really funny how on both sides,
very good people.
Joe Biden has been depending on who you talk to, Joe Biden is either this progressive stalwart champion of progressive rights who's really gonna work on healthcare and the Green New Deal and climate change plan. Just look on his website. It says on his website that he has a climate change plan. Well, if I just look at the website, then I know what he's going to do. And then you have this other side of people that are like, he's a fucking communist and he's gonna take our jobs away and sell them to the Mexicans and then give all our nukes to the Chinese. Like, but when in reality, like, I think that if you just look at his voting record and you look at his history as an elected official, it's more like just another neolib, just another like, hey, Iraq, cool man, let's do it. Let's do the Iraq thing. Hey, I'm not banning fracking. Don't say it again, Jack, or I'm gonna get really upset. I
know a lot of progressives felt betrayed when he said that his like climate change policies and reducing subsidies for fossil fuel companies, green energy investment was going to be in the DNC platform. Then it simply wasn't when August came around.
Yeah, so it's
Thanks,
like
Biden.
it's so clear that this guy is just gonna. I think what he's gonna do for the next 4 years is he's gonna chill, and he's gonna give good speeches. Which I can't believe I'm saying this, because over the course of the primaries, when I was watching this guy go up on the podium and say, "We all these truths to be L7, and you know the thing." You know, I was looking at this shit and I was going, "This guy ain't gonna fucking win." Like, come on,
like he's been
man.
on some like good stuff lately.
Yeah, and I guess they gave him some. I don't know what they gave him. Coke? Maybe they're just he's just doing coke.
They put him on the same Adderall diet Trump's on, apparently.
Yeah, and he like when he had that acceptance speech, man, and he was talking about like, hey man, it's okay if you lost the election, that's all right. Hey, I've lost a couple of things too. And if you voted for Donald Trump, then I'm not gonna execute you like Alexandria Cortez is gonna do it. That's not me, man. Hey, I'm Uncle Joe, and I'm a real nice guy. Just we'll figure it out, all right? Like he did that for like a solid like 45 minutes, and I was like, holy shit. This guy really just managed to like fucking. There was all of this steam like built up in the collective consciousness of the country
what we need right
for a
now,
second,
man.
and he was just like, and I was like, okay, you know, I don't fucking agree with.
I was relieved Bernie didn't win, because it would still be such a fight right now.
I don't agree with the fucking thing this guy is gonna do policy wise, except maybe a couple of things. And I'm not, anytime he goes up on the podium and says something, I'm going to go, yeah, he doesn't mean that.
But the whole reason we're talking about this like this.
The results of a speech are important. It's why we pay so much attention to them and so much mind to them, because politics is just, it's all about perception. And if he can give off the perception that, hey, everything's all good, and he does it enough, then, you know, I guess America can transition away. Like the joke that I made on Facebook, the boomer joke that I made was America got so tired of a guy who couldn't shut the hell up for 4 years that they decided to change things up a bit by voting for a guy who can't talk for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's what America needs right now, is a guy who can't talk.
Well, it's the reason we're talking about this like this, and like not talking about, you know, Joe 94 crime bill. Look, I got a lot of problems with Joe Biden. And there's a couple of policies with Trump that like I can get down with, but the thing is, the election, like the alleging election fraud thing, I think is where a lot of people are going to split with him. Where it's not real, man. Like you can't just say that the American elections aren't real.
But you know what's crazy? Like what that says about the situation that we're in is that a very large amount of people legitimately believe that right now. There's a very large percentage of
and that's why
people in the country who just straight up think that this shit was fucking rigged and Biden stole it. And it's not a situation where it's not like a couple of crazy people over here, and you know, like, because that's something that I think the Democrats, left-leaning people, have a tendency to do, is they just say like, oh well, everybody who votes Republican is, you know, they might as well just put on a Klan hood, which I think is disingenuous and inaccurate. But at the same time, it's really gotten to a point now where I think people are starting to realize that Donald Trump was not as much Donald Trump as much as Donald Trump was his base. And that's why he doubled down and said a lot of the shit that he said, because he could never bring himself to say, hey, let's do something about cops fucking murdering people for no reason. Hey, let's do something about COVID. Hey, let's do something about climate change, even though most people that you and I run into on the street would probably feel that way. It's because he has this base of people that just straight up fucking don't feel that way on these topics. And he can just say whatever the fuck he wants. And then people will go, yeah, Fox News is a bunch of commies. They turn liberal. Yeah, I get everything from Newsmax now. I mean, just fucking... it's straight up, and what makes it so scary to me is that it's an entire population of the country that is basically just being like led along in a line. And it's pretty much, if you look at the whole electoral map, there's a whole lot of red out there of people that hardworking people. I don't agree with the the super lefties strategy to just say like, oh, well, fuck these people. A lot of these people are very hardworking and they're in dire straits and they're in shitty circumstances, and that's the reason why Hillary lost in 2016 was because she did such a terrible job of trying to reach out to these people and get them on her side. She literally said we're gonna go to West Virginia and ban coal and fuck you if you like coal, pretty much. The whole basket of deplorables thing. And Trump,
apparently Joe Biden did better.
Yeah, I guess.
Or Trump did terribly worse.
Trump did worse. With the COVID thing, I think enough people were looked at the COVID situation. We haven't even talked about COVID yet. We have that on the list. We should get into it.
Let's get a couple facts in here real quick. I'll go ahead and finish.
I was just gonna say, like, most of Trump's base also doesn't really give a fuck about COVID. My call for the election was gonna be based off of the COVID situation. I thought the Democrats were doing more to shoot themselves in the foot. I thought they had a chance to really get the landslide victory they wanted, where they could, take over the Senate and maybe even get more leverage in the House. If over the course of the pandemic, they hadn't just said, well, we can't really pass a bill for you guys because that might make Trump look good and we can't do that. And most people were looking at that situation and going, well, because Trump got more voters. He got 71 million people to vote for him. That's more than he had in 2016. So a lot of people, I think, looked at the COVID situation and said, okay, this guy is going to come in and tell me that I can't go to work and I'm going to lose my house. And this guy says, go to work anyway and you'll probably get sick, but at least I'll have a chance to keep my house.
Flu.
Or it's just a flu, yeah. But a lot of people, even if they don't think it's just a flu, they'll be like, you know what? I would rather take my risk with COVID than, have a 100% chance of losing everything because the Democrats in my state won't give me a fucking penny, but they'll give it to United Airlines and Goldman Sachs instead.
Absolutely.